The story begins on the desert planet of Tatooine, where the twin suns cast long shadows over the dunes of the Jundland wastes. The air shimmered with heat, and the distant hum of pod racers echoed from Mos Espa. In a small, dust-choked cantina on the outskirts of Anchorhead, a cloaked figure sat alone, his silhouette sharp against the flickering neon lights. Anakin Skywalker, now 25, was no longer the Jedi prodigy or the chosen one of prophecy. His eyes, once bright with purpose, were shadowed with a restless hunger. The galaxy had changed, and so had he. Years ago, during the Battle of Geonosis, Anakin had defied the Jedi Council's orders, refusing to leave his mother, Shmi, in the hands of the Tusken Raiders. He had slaughtered the camp to save her, but the act fractured something within him. The Jedi, sensing his rage, expelled him from the Order, deeming him too dangerous. Obi-Wan Kenobi, torn between loyalty and duty, had pleaded for leniency, but the Council was unyielding. Anakin, cast out, returned to Tatooine with Shmi, vowing never to serve another master. Yet the Force still burned in him, a restless storm he could neither control nor ignore. He became a bounty hunter, wielding his lightsaber not for justice, but for credits, his skills honed by necessity and bitterness. Anakin's inner conflict was a constant companion. He hated the Jedi for abandoning him, yet he yearned for the purpose they once gave him. He despised the galaxy's cruelty, but his bounties often served its worst warlords. The Force whispered of destiny, but he drowned it out with action, chasing contracts to silence his doubts. Tonight, he was in Anchorhead to meet a client, a job that promised enough credits to repair his battered ship, the Twilight. But his thoughts were elsewhere, tangled in memories of Padme Amidala, the senator he had loved and lost when he chose Tatooine over Naboo. She had begged him to stay, to fight for the Republic, but he couldn't abandon Shmi. Now, Padme was a distant star, her light unreachable. As Anakin sipped his drink, a familiar figure slid into the booth across from him. Boba Fett, clad in his father's Mandalorian armor, leaned back with a calculating stare. The young bounty hunter, barely out of his teens, had crossed paths with Anakin before, their rivalry marked by grudging respect. Boba was here not as a competitor, but as a messenger. He slid a holodisc across the table, its surface glinting in the dim light. The job was from an anonymous client, targeting a separatist leader hiding on Nar Shaddaa. The payout was massive, but the catch was clear. The target was under the protection of Count Dooku himself. Boba's voice was cool, but his words carried a challenge, daring Anakin to take the risk. Anakin's fingers tightened around the disc, his mind racing. Nar Shaddaa meant danger, but also a chance to strike at the Separatists, the faction he blamed for the galaxy's chaos. Boba's presence stirred another thought. Could this job lead to answers about the Sith, the shadowy force Anakin suspected was manipulating the war? The cantina's door hissed open, admitting a gust of sand and the distant wail of a crate dragon. Anakin pocketed the holodisc, his decision made. He would take the job, not just for credits, but to reclaim a piece of the purpose he'd lost. Boba smirked, sensing Anakin's resolve, and slipped into the shadows. As Anakin stepped into the scorching night, the Force pulsed around him, a warning and a promise. This bounty would test him, not just as a hunter, but as a man caught between light and dark. Anakin's journey to Nar Shaddaa was swift, the Twilight cutting through hyperspace with a groan of overworked engines. The smuggler's moon loomed ahead, a neon-lit sprawl of towers and slums, where crime lords ruled and morality was a luxury. Anakin's heart pounded as he navigated the crowded sky lanes, his senses heightened by the Force. Nar Shaddaa was a place of temptation, where his anger could easily consume him. He focused on the mission, tracked down the Separatist leader, a Neimoidian named Lot Dodd, rumored to be hiding in the Corellian sector. Dodd was a key financier for Dooku's war machine, and taking him out could disrupt the Separatists' plans. But Anakin knew Dooku's involvement meant Sith interference, and that stirred a dangerous curiosity in him. In the Corellian sector, Anakin moved through the underbelly of the city, his cloak blending with the crowds of spacers and thieves. The air was thick with the stench of spice and ion exhaust. He tracked Dodd to a fortified casino, its gaudy lights masking a separatist stronghold. Using the Force, Anakin slipped past guards, his lightsaber hidden beneath his cloak. Inside, the casino buzzed with gamblers and droid enforcers. Anakin's senses locked onto Dodd, seated in a private booth, surrounded by Magna Guards. But another presence caught his attention. Asajj Ventress, Dooku's assassin, lurking in the shadows. Her cold gaze met his, and Anakin felt a surge of adrenaline. Ventress was a wild card, her loyalty to Dooku questionable, but her lethality undeniable. If she was here, the job was more complicated than Boba had let on. Anakin's approach was interrupted by a sudden explosion. The casino's walls shook as Republic commandos stormed the building, their blasters cutting through droid defenses. The raid was led by none other than Obi-Wan Kenobi, now a Jedi general in the Clone Wars. Anakin's heart twisted at the sight of his former master, the man who had failed to defend him before the Council. Obi-Wan's presence was no coincidence. The Jedi were after Dodd, too. As chaos erupted, Anakin used the distraction to close in on Dodd, but Ventress struck first, her twin red sabers igniting with a hiss. Their duel was brutal, lightsabers clashing in a blur of blue and red. Anakin's anger fueled his strikes, but Ventress taunted him, sensing his conflict. She whispered of Dooku's plans, hinting at a greater Sith conspiracy, planting seeds of doubt in Anakin's mind. The fight spilled into the casino's upper levels, where Obi-Wan's clones were pinning down Dodd's guards. Anakin and Ventress broke apart, each retreating as the Republic tightened its grip. Anakin caught a glimpse of Obi-Wan, their eyes meeting for a fleeting moment. Shame and resentment surged in Anakin, but he pushed it down, focusing on his escape. He slipped into Nar Shaddaa's labyrinthine alleys, Dodd's location still eluding him. The encounter with Ventress and Obi-Wan had shaken him, stirring memories of the Jedi he once was. He couldn't afford to falter now. The Force guided him to a smuggler's den where Dodd was rumored to be regrouping, but Anakin knew the real challenge was within himself. Could he stay true to his path as a bounty hunter, or would the Force pull him back to the light? On Tatooine, Boba Fett lingered in the shadows of Mos Espa, his armor glinting under the suns. He had delivered Anakin's contract, but his role was far from over. Boba was working for a mysterious client, one who knew of Anakin's Force sensitivity and wanted him tested. The young bounty hunter had his own agenda, to prove himself the best in the galaxy, even against a Force wielder like Anakin. Boba's father, Jango, had died at Geonosis, a wound that fueled his ambition. He tracked Anakin's movements through Nar Shaddaa, feeding intel to his client while planning his own move. Boba's involvement hinted at a larger game, one where Anakin was both hunter and prey. Anakin's next stop was Ryloth, where Dodd had fled after the Nar Shaddaa raid. The Twi'lek homeworld was a war zone, its rocky canyons scarred by separatist occupation. Anakin landed the twilight in a hidden ravine, his mind heavy with doubt. Ryloth's suffering reminded him of Tatooine's slaves, stirring a desire to do more than chase bounties. He infiltrated a separatist outpost, using the Force to bypass droid patrols. Inside, he found Dodd negotiating with a hologram of Dooku, discussing a secret weapon on Mustafar. Anakin's blood ran cold. The Sith were planning something catastrophic, and Dodd was the key to unraveling it. But before he could act, Ventress ambushed him again, her sabers slicing through the outpost's dim corridors. Their duel was fiercer this time, Anakin's blue blade meeting her red in a storm of sparks. He fought not just for the bounty, but to prove he was more than a hired blade. As the outpost crumbled under Republic bombardment, Anakin escaped with a data chip stolen from Dodd's console, containing coordinates to Mustafar. Ventress vanished into the chaos, but her taunts lingered, urging Anakin to seek the truth about the Sith. He contacted Boba via holocom, demanding answers about the client. Boba was evasive, hinting that the job was a test of Anakin's loyalty. Frustrated, Anakin set course for Mustafar, determined to end the hunt and uncover the Sith's plans. The Force hummed with warning, but Anakin pressed forward, his heart torn between vengeance and redemption. Mustafar's molten landscape stretched before Anakin Skywalker as the twilight descended through its ashen skies. Rivers of lava carved glowing scars across the planet, and the air was thick with sulfur. The coordinates from the data chip led to a separatist mining facility, a fortress of durasteel perched above a lava flow. Anakin's heart pounded, not from the heat, but from the Force's relentless pull. This was no ordinary bounty. Lot Dodd was here, guarded by Count Dooku's forces, and the secret weapon mentioned on Ryloth loomed like a shadow over the mission. Anakin's conflict deepened. He was a bounty hunter, driven by credits and survival. Yet the Force urged him to confront the Sith, to reclaim the hero he once dreamed of being. His lightsaber, clipped to his belt, felt heavier than ever, a reminder of the Jedi he had abandoned. Inside the facility, Anakin moved like a specter, using the Force to cloak his presence from droid sentries. The corridors hummed with machinery, and the air vibrated with the energy of something massive being constructed below. He sensed Dodd's fear, a beacon in the Force, and followed it to a command chamber. There, the Neimoidian stood before a holotable, flanked by Magna Guards and Asajj Ventress. Anakin's grip tightened on his saber as Ventress's eyes locked onto him, her smirk sharp as a blade. She had anticipated his arrival, and the trap was set. Before Anakin could strike, the chamber's doors sealed, and Ventress ignited her twin sabers, her movements a blur of lethal grace. Their duel erupted, blue and red blades clashing in a storm of sparks. Anakin fought with raw power, his anger fueling each strike, but Ventress was cunning, exploiting his recklessness. She taunted him, revealing that the secret weapon was a Kyber-powered super laser, a prototype for a weapon Dooku planned to unleash on the Republic. The revelation shook Anakin, stirring memories of the Jedi's warnings about the Sith's ambition. The fight spilled into the facility's core, where a massive Kyber crystal pulsed with dark energy, suspended above a lava chasm. Anakin's senses screamed as the Force warned of danger, but he pressed forward, driven by a need to stop Dodd and prove his worth. Ventress's blades grazed his shoulder, drawing blood, but Anakin retaliated with a force push that sent her crashing into a console. Seizing the moment, he lunged for Dodd, only to be intercepted by a new threat. General Grievous, emerging from the shadows with 4 lightsabers, spinning like a whirlwind. The cyborg's mechanical laugh echoed as he joined the fray, forcing Anakin to fight on 2 fronts. Grievous's relentless assault pushed Anakin to his limits, each saber strike a test of his skill and resolve. Amid the chaos, Dodd slipped away, retreating to a shuttle bay. Anakin's frustration boiled over, his anger threatening to consume him. He wanted to end this, to destroy the Sith's plans, but the bounty hunter in him screamed to secure the target and survive. As the facility shook under Republic bombardment, another sign of Obi-Wan's pursuit, Anakin broke free, using the Force to collapse a walkway, slowing Grievous and Ventress. He pursued Dodd to the shuttle bay, where the Neimoidian was boarding a transport. Anakin's saber ignited, cutting through droid guards, but Ventress reappeared, her blades blocking his path. Their duel resumed, fiercer now, as the bay's walls glowed with encroaching lava. Ventress mocked Anakin's solitude, calling him a lost Jedi chasing ghosts. Her words cut deeper than her sabers, stirring his longing for Padme and the life he'd forsaken. With a surge of desperation, Anakin disarmed Ventress, sending one of her sabers skittering across the floor. But before he could reach Dodd, the shuttle launched, vanishing into Mustafar's smoky skies. Ventress laughed, slipping into the shadows, leaving Anakin alone with his failure. Anakin staggered back to the twilight, his body bruised and his mind in turmoil. The data chip had revealed the super laser's next destination, Coruscant, the heart of the Republic. Dodd was heading there to deliver the Kyber crystal to Dooku, who planned to destabilize the Senate. Anakin's bounty was slipping away, but the stakes were now galactic. He contacted Boba Fett via holocom, his voice sharp with anger. Boba, stationed on Nar Shaddaa, admitted the client was a Republic senator, desperate to stop Dooku's plot. But Boba's tone carried a warning. The client suspected Anakin's force powers and might betray him. Boba's own agenda was clear. He was tracking Anakin, ready to claim the bounty if Anakin faltered. The young Mandalorian's ambition mirrored Anakin's own, a dark reflection of his drive to prove himself. Anakin cut the transmission, his resolve hardening. He would follow Dodd to Coruscant, not for the credits, but to confront the Sith and reclaim his destiny. On Nar Shaddaa, Boba Fett stood in a Hutt palace, surrounded by the opulence of crime lords. His armor gleamed under the dim lights, but his mind was on Anakin. The client, Senator Bail Organa, had hired Boba to monitor Anakin, suspecting the former Jedi could be a key to stopping Dooku. Boba cared little for politics. His goal was to outshine Anakin, to prove he was the galaxy's greatest hunter. Yet he sensed Anakin's turmoil, a vulnerability he could exploit. Boba's father had taught him to read his prey, and Anakin was a man on the edge, torn between light and dark. Boba's role grew more dangerous as he fed intel to Organa while plotting his own move, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test both hunters. Anakin's journey to Coruscant was a blur of hyperspace and self-doubt. The city planet loomed ahead, its towers glittering under a false veneer of peace. The Clone Wars had scarred its underlevels, where refugees and criminals thrived in the shadows. Anakin landed in the Uskru district, blending into the neon-lit crowds. His senses guided him to a Senate warehouse, where Dodd was meeting Dooku's emissaries. The Force buzzed with danger, and Anakin's heart raced as he infiltrated the facility, his cloak concealing his saber. Yet the cost was heavy. Inside, he found Dodd overseeing the transfer of the Kyber crystal, guarded by a squad of battle droids. But another presence loomed, Obi-Wan Kenobi, leading a Jedi strike team to seize the crystal. Anakin's breath caught as he watched his former master from the shadows, their past rushing back like a tidal wave. Obi-Wan's calm resolve contrasted with Anakin's chaotic energy, a painful reminder of the Jedi he could have been. The warehouse erupted into chaos as Obi-Wan's team engaged the droids, blasters and sabers lighting up the dark. Anakin seized the opportunity, slipping toward Dodd, but Dooku himself appeared, his red saber igniting with a hiss. The Sith Lord's presence was a storm in the Force, and Anakin froze, torn between attacking and retreating. Dooku's gaze pierced through him, sensing his power and his pain. The Sith offered a choice: join him to destroy the Republic's corruption, or die as a pawn. Anakin's anger flared, but the Force whispered of Padme, of Shmi, of a life beyond vengeance. He ignited his saber, choosing to fight, not for Dooku or the Jedi, but for himself. The duel was fierce, Anakin's raw strength clashing with Dooku's elegance. Sparks flew as their blades met, the warehouse trembling under the Force's weight. Obi-Wan's intervention broke the stalemate, his blue saber joining the fray. The two fought Dooku in a desperate alliance, but Anakin's heart was heavy with resentment. Obi-Wan's presence stirred memories of betrayal, yet his skill reminded Anakin of their bond. Dooku, outnumbered, unleashed a torrent of Force lightning, forcing Anakin and Obi-Wan to retreat. Dodd escaped with the crystal, and Dooku vanished into the chaos, leaving Anakin and Obi-Wan alone amidst the wreckage. Their eyes met, and for a moment Anakin wanted to speak, to explain his pain. But pride silenced him, and he fled into Coruscant's depths, the Kyber crystal's trail leading to a final confrontation. The Force, pulsed with destiny, and Anakin knew the endgame was near. Coruscant's underlevels pulsed with danger as Anakin Skywalker pursued Lot Dodd's trail. The city planet's neon-lit depths were a maze of rusted walkways and flickering holograms, where the Clone Wars scars festered in the shadows. Anakin's heart raced, the Force a turbulent storm within him. The Kyber crystal, now in Dodd's possession, was bound for a separatist rendezvous in orbit, where Count Dooku planned to activate the super laser prototype. Anakin's mission had transcended a mere bounty. It was a chance to stop a Sith plot that could shatter the Republic. Yet his inner conflict raged. Could he be the hero he once aspired to be, or was he doomed to remain a mercenary, driven by anger and loss? The memory of Padmé's faith in him clashed with the bitterness of his expulsion from the Jedi, fueling his resolve to end this hunt on his terms. Anakin tracked Dodd to a derelict landing platform in the Manurai district, where a separatist shuttle was preparing to launch. The platform, suspended above a chasm of urban sprawl, groaned under the weight of battle droids and Magna Guards. Anakin moved like a phantom, using the Force to cloak his approach. His blue lightsaber ignited, cutting through droid patrols in a blur of precision. Dodd, cowering behind a crate, clutched a case containing the Kyber crystal, his fear a beacon in the Force. But before Anakin could reach him, Asajj Ventress struck from above, her red sabers slicing through the air. Their duel was a tempest, blades clashing amidst the platform's sparks and smoke. Ventress's taunts were sharper now, mocking Anakin's isolation, his failure to save those he loved. Each word stoked his anger, but he fought to channel it, remembering Obi-Wan's lessons of control. The platform trembled as Republic gunships descended, Obi-Wan Kenobi leading a clone assault to secure the crystal. Anakin's heart twisted. His former master was once again a rival, yet their goals aligned. The battle escalated as clones and droids clashed, blaster fire stitching the air. Anakin disengaged from Ventress, using the Force to hurl a crate at her, and sprinted toward Dodd. He tackled the Neimoidian, prying the case from his grasp, but Ventress recovered, her sabers grazing Anakin's back. Pain seared through him, but he pressed forward, clutching the crystal. Obi-Wan's voice called out, urging Anakin to stand down, but pride and resentment silenced any response. Instead, Anakin leaped onto a departing shuttle, the crystal in hand, as Ventress and the clones fired after him. The shuttle rocketed into Coruscant's orbit, where a separatist cruiser, the Providence, awaited. Anakin's breath caught. The super laser was aboard, and Dooku was there, orchestrating the final stage of the Sith's plan. The Force screamed of danger, but Anakin steeled himself, knowing this was his moment to defy fate. Aboard the Providence, Anakin infiltrated the cruiser's hangar, the Kyber crystal a heavy weight in his pack. The ship's corridors were a labyrinth of durasteel, patrolled by battle droids and overseen by General Grievous, whose mechanical cough echoed through the halls. Anakin's senses locked onto Dooku, a dark presence in the command bridge, but another figure emerged. Boba Fett, clad in Mandalorian armor, blaster rifle trained on Anakin. The young bounty hunter had betrayed him, working for Dooku to secure the crystal. Boba's voice was cold, admitting he saw Anakin as a threat to his legacy. Their confrontation was swift, Anakin's saber deflecting Boba's blaster bolts. The Force guided his movements, but Boba's jetpack and wrist rockets kept him at bay. The duel spilled into the cruiser's reactor core, where the super laser's Kyber chamber glowed with menacing energy. Anakin's anger surged, but a sudden vision of Padmé's face steadied him, urging him to rise above vengeance. The fight was interrupted by an explosion as Republic fighters, led by Obi-Wan, attacked the Providence. The cruiser shuddered, alarms blaring, as Anakin and Boba broke apart. Anakin sensed Dooku's approach and sprinted toward the bridge, leaving Boba to fend off clones. The bridge was a cathedral of technology, Dooku standing before a viewport, his red saber ignited. The Sith Lord's presence was suffocating, his words laced with temptation. Join the Sith, wield the super laser, and reshape the galaxy. Anakin refused, his blue saber clashing with Dooku's in a duel that shook the bridge. Sparks flew as their blades met, Anakin's raw power matched by Dooku's elegance. The Force swirled around them, a battle of wills as much as sabers. Anakin's anger threatened to overwhelm him, but memories of Shmi's love, Padme's hope, and Obi-Wan's faith anchored him. An unexpected ally emerged. Ventress, her loyalty to Dooku shattered by his manipulations. She joined Anakin, her red sabers striking at Dooku from behind. The Sith Lord fought with ferocious skill, lightning crackling from his fingers, but Anakin and Ventress pressed their advantage. The bridge's consoles erupted in flames as the Republic's assault intensified, the cruiser listing under heavy fire. Anakin seized an opening, disarming Dooku with a powerful strike, but Ventress delivered the killing blow, her saber piercing Dooku's chest. The Sith Lord collapsed, his death a shockwave in the Force. But the super laser was activating, its kyber chamber glowing brighter. Anakin realized the truth. The weapon was automated, set to fire on Coruscant's Senate district. With no time to disable it, he made a desperate choice, using the Force to overload the kyber crystal, risking his life to save the planet below. The Providence began to disintegrate, explosions ripping through its hull. Anakin, Ventress, and Boba, who had survived the clone assault, raced to escape pods, the crystal's energy surging uncontrollably. Anakin's vision blurred, the Force roaring in his ears, but he felt a fleeting connection to Padme, a whisper of forgiveness. The pod launched just as the cruiser erupted, a fireball lighting up Coruscant's orbit. Below, Obi-Wan watched from a gunship, his heart heavy with the belief that Anakin was lost. But Anakin's pod spiraled toward the planet, its trajectory uncertain, carrying him toward an unknown fate. Anakin Skywalker's escape pod crashed into the depths of Coruscant's underlevels, a tangled wreckage of durasteel amidst the city planet's forgotten slums. The impact left him battered, his body aching from burns and bruises, but the Force sustained him, a faint pulse of light amidst his pain. The kyber crystal's overload had destroyed the Providence and its super laser, saving the Senate district from annihilation. Anakin's vision of Padme lingered, her imagined forgiveness a bittersweet anchor as he clambered from the wreckage. The Force hummed softly now, no longer a storm, but a quiet guide. He had stopped Dooku's plan, but the galaxy remained fractured, and his own path was uncertain. Was he a hero, a bounty hunter, or something else entirely? The question weighed on him as he limped through the neon-lit alleys, seeking refuge. In the underlevels, Anakin found shelter in an abandoned maintenance hub, its rusted walls a stark contrast to the Senate's gleaming towers above. His injuries forced him to rest, and in the silence, memories flooded back. Shmi's gentle smile, Padme's unwavering belief, Obi-Wan's steady guidance. He had fought for them, not for credits or glory, but the loss of his Jedi life haunted him. The Force whispered of redemption, but Anakin feared he had strayed too far. His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar presence, Asajj Ventress, her silhouette emerging from the shadows. She had survived the Providence's destruction, her red sabers dimmed, her expression unreadable. Ventress revealed her own betrayal by Dooku, who had planned to discard her once the super laser was complete. She had fought alongside Anakin not for loyalty, but for survival. Now, she offered a truce, suggesting they part ways as equals. Anakin nodded, sensing her sincerity, and Ventress vanished into the night, leaving him with a flicker of hope that even the darkest hearts could change. The next dawn brought an unexpected visitor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, his Jedi robes tattered from the battle in orbit. The Republic had tracked Anakin's pod, and Obi-Wan had come alone, driven by a bond he could not sever. Their reunion was heavy with unspoken pain. Obi-Wan's eyes held sorrow for the years lost, but also pride for Anakin's sacrifice. He revealed the truth. The Jedi Council had been wrong to expel Anakin, blinded by fear of his power. Obi-Wan offered a path back, not as a Jedi, but as an ally to rebuild a galaxy torn by war. Anakin's heart ached, torn between resentment and longing. He refused the offer, unable to forgive the Order's betrayal, but he clasped Obi-Wan's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of their brotherhood. As Obi-Wan left, Anakin felt a weight lift, the Force guiding him toward a new purpose. Boba Fett's role in the saga concluded in the shadows of Nal Hutta, where he reported to Bail Organa. The senator, unaware of Boba's double dealing with Dooku, thanked him for his intel, which had helped the Republic locate the Providence. Boba's ambition remained unfulfilled. Anakin had outshone him, proving the Force was a power he could not match. Yet Boba's encounter with Anakin had changed him. He vowed to hone his skills, not out of vengeance, but to carve his own legacy. His departure from Organa's service marked the end of his entanglement in Anakin's story, but his rivalry lingered, a promise of future clashes in the galaxy's underworld. Anakin's actions rippled across the galaxy. The destruction of the super laser and Dooku's death exposed the Sith's manipulations, shattering the separatist leadership. On Coruscant, Bail Organa and Padme Amidala led a Senate inquiry, uncovering evidence of Chancellor Palpatine's ties to the Sith. The revelation sparked outrage, and Palpatine, unmasked as Darth Sidious, fled into exile, his plans for an empire undone. The Senate, shaken by the truth, elected Organa as interim chancellor, with Padme as his chief advisor. They pushed for reforms, limiting executive power and opening peace talks with separatist remnants. The Clone Wars began to wane, replaced by cautious negotiations, though the galaxy's wounds would take years to heal. Anakin, now a fugitive in the eyes of some, chose a quieter path. He returned to Tatooine, reuniting with Shmi in a small homestead near Mos Eisley. The twin suns set over the dunes as mother and son embraced, their bond unbroken by the galaxy's chaos. Anakin no longer hunted bounties, instead using his Force abilities to protect local communities from slavers and raiders. His lightsaber, once a weapon of vengeance, became a beacon of hope for the oppressed. Yet the cost was steep. Padme, now a galactic leader, remained beyond his reach, their love a memory sacrificed for the greater good. Anakin accepted this loss, finding solace in Shmi's presence and the lives he saved. The Force flowed freely through him, no longer a burden, but a gift to share. A final echo of the past emerged in the form of R2-D2, the astromech droid that had served Anakin during his Jedi days. Sent by Obi-Wan, R2 arrived on Tatooine, its familiar beeps stirring nostalgia. The droid carried a message from Padme, recorded before the Senate's reforms. Her voice, steady but laced with sorrow, thanked Anakin for his sacrifice, affirming her belief in the man he had become. She spoke of a galaxy reborn, one where his actions had lit the way. Anakin listened in silence, tears tracing his weathered face, and entrusted R2 to a local moisture farmer, Owen Lars, ensuring the droid's safety. The gesture was a farewell to his past, a nod to the hero he had once been. The galaxy entered a fragile era of rebuilding. The Jedi Order, humbled by its failures, reformed under Obi-Wan's guidance, embracing emotion as a strength rather than a flaw. Planets like Ryloth and Naboo became hubs of reconstruction, their people united by shared loss and hope. Anakin's legend grew, whispered in cantinas as the Force-sensitive bounty hunter who defied the Sith. He remained on Tatooine, a guardian in the shadows, his heart at peace despite its scars. The Force, once a source of conflict, now bound him to the galaxy's future, a silent promise that light could endure even in the darkest times. And folks, that's our story for today. This one was a blast to write, diving into Anakin's struggle to find his place outside the Jedi Order while staying true to the Star Wars spirit. I loved exploring his inner turmoil and giving him a bittersweet redemption, balancing the tragedy of his lost love with the hope of a better galaxy. The nods to Boba, Ventress, and R2 were my way of tying it to the saga we all love, and I hope you felt that nostalgia too. I drew inspiration from the gritty vibe of The Mandalorian and the emotional depth of the Clone Wars, aiming for a tale that's both action-packed and heartfelt. Let me know what you thought. Did Anakin's journey hit the mark? What if should I tackle next? Thanks for reading, and I'll see you in the next story.